Hello and welcome everyone to the Arts Taster Day for NUI Galway Day 3. We have a really exciting schedule for you today. I'll just run it through really quickly. We're going to have 2 talks and then we're going to have a 20-minute break. We're going to have another 2 talks, a 10-minute break, and we're going to finish with 3 final talks. We're going to kickstart today with a talk from Professor Cathal O'Donoghue on international development. So I will hand it over to Cathal.
Hi there, sorry about the technical glitch there. My name is Cathal O'Donoghue, and I'm the Chair of Public Policy at NUI Galway. I'm here to talk to you about a new subject, international development, that starts in the BA this September. So for those of you interested in taking arts degrees, whether it be the general BA or BA International or any of the other degrees, there's an option to take this subject. What is it? Effectively, it's about helping other countries. Ireland is a rich country. It's a stable country with good institutions, does very well on global well-being and happiness indices. It's a nice place to live. And so the country is a strategy to help other countries and needs people to do the work to enable that to happen. And that's what the subject international development focuses on. So Ireland has a government policy called A Better World. It's a framework to expand our development cooperation, so the way in which we assist other countries. And the vision is for a more equal, peaceful and sustainable world, shaping and protecting our stability, our prosperity, our shared interests and our common future. So it's about working on a common future together with other countries. It's very closely linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, which you may often hear about. Sustainability is really important. There's economic, social, and environmental dimensions to that. And as part of that plan, Ireland is going to double its development aid to 3 billion per annum by 2030. So that's a government strategy to spend quite a lot more money. And at the heart of the strategy, it's a pledge in relation to these SDGs, these Sustainable Development Goals. And we focus on leaving nobody behind and reaching the furthest behind first. The types of areas that Ireland will focus on in the developing world are things like gender equality, climate action, and governance. The programme is led by myself, my colleague Una Marie. I just finished a stint as Dean of Arts and Social Science University. I have background in agriculture and food development in Ireland and overseas in Teagasc and in the Commission for the Economic Development of Rural Areas, and a lot of research interests. And I've had in development with very many PhD students in different areas like climate change, inequality, social protection, and so on. Dr. Una Murray is a practitioner. She's a lot of experience in the field. So my background is more in policy, hers in the field. So she's experienced field-based development practice professional and worked with very many international agencies and is a board member of a number of Irish organisations that are involved in international development. And her PhD is in international development. So what is international development? So it's bringing about social change that allows people to achieve their human potential across human development, human rights, poverty reduction, economic aspects, governance aspects. So for a country and for people as a country to be happy, there's a whole bunch of things that you need to get right. And international development is about working with countries to help those things, whether it be economic, whether it be gender, human rights, working in practical ways to help countries achieve those goals. So it's understanding process of change in both developing and developed countries. So I work in CHAG. CHAG is a development agency. It's focusing on development aspects to help farmers in Ireland. International development is about helping countries, institutions and people in other countries to achieve goals. So working with communities, governments, economies, politics, institutions, groups and individuals. So it's quite broad because the whole nature of international development is multifaceted, and as a result the subject is multidisciplinary because it means that you need to touch on lots of things, from sociology to geography to human rights to economics and so on, as well as practical skills. We'll come back to that. So if you're thinking about international development, you might want to ask yourself a few questions. Are you open-minded? Are you open-minded in seeing different perspectives and different solutions? Do you like to help people to help themselves? That's what development is about. Development is about helping countries. It's not doing things for other people. It's helping them do things for themselves. Are you focused on getting things done? So it's international development has some theoretical aspects in terms of understanding the context, but also very practical elements in terms of running projects and getting things done. So if you want to do something rather than just complain about things. So do you want to be a change agent to make things happen, to make change happen? Given the different aspects of international development, are you able to see the big picture? And we're thinking about working with other countries. So are you interested in other cultures, and are you empathetic? Are you concerned about how other people feel and how other people are? So the types of areas you could work in this area include non-government organizations, so things like charities, both in Ireland and overseas, community development, working with communities, international agencies like the United Nations, UNICEF, working with children, UNHCR, working with refugees, national government agencies like Irish Aid. So Ireland spends money through all of these areas to have impact on the ground in projects. Or indeed private sector and consultancy groups. There's very many businesses working in this area because so much needs to happen. Lots of different topics, as I mentioned. So from advocacy, advocating change either in the country or in Ireland to help other countries, working with refugees. We see millions of refugees at the moment from Ukraine. Agencies help them establish themselves in Ireland, feed them, educate them, integrate them, and help them to return when it's safe to do so. Human rights issues. We live in a country with reasonably strong human rights. There are other countries we see with lesser human rights. So working at all levels to improve that, NGOs, government planning, and so on. So the types of areas in these countries include both urban areas and the countryside. My own research interest focuses on agriculture, so I worked a lot in rural communities. And on the right here, we see Una Murray working in the field with a community group in a country in Africa. The type of work, community development, working youth projects, gender and social inclusion, for example, but it's very multifaceted. Effectively, no matter what area of interest you have, I think you can find a niche within international development, because it is broad brush and it needs lots of different types of skills for people working in different areas. So the types of things that specific things that you might help people as opposed to the general concepts. So it's a government that knows that life's still tough for poor people in the countryside. Secure land title for my son, safe water in the field when we want it, education for my children to grow something of higher value, jobs in towns for my daughter-in-law and son-in-law, a pension for me, a decent road to market. So practical things that help people in real ways. That's what international development is about, helping people with the needs that they have for themselves. Day to day, the type of work that somebody working in international development does is project management. So projects are investments that have activities that help people on the ground in all these areas we mentioned. Training and education, because if you want to help people help themselves, you need to train them maybe in skills they need. Research to find out more about the country, about the question, about the context, so you can give the most appropriate advice or design the most appropriate programs. This work is expensive, and so fundraising is very important, raising money from government, from people, from foundations to help this work to happen. And then communications. So there has been a change from just sending reports back, but communicating more widely to get buy-in around an issue. If people don't know about it, they don't necessarily give money, they don't necessarily support the politics to make a change happen. So communicating issues in all directions is really important. And because the work is in diverse countries in different parts of the world, there is a good bit of traveling, field work and so on the ground. In Galway, the types of things you'll do in the degree are differences between countries in terms of history, economic and human development, human rights, project planning, research methods, data analysis, report writing skills, fieldwork skills. So the theory of international development and the knowledge you need to have to be able to work in the space, and then the practical skills. So there's a very strong practice focus to be able to function when you go and work on the ground. The course outline, it's a 4-year subject within the BA. So we start with introductions to international development, sustainable development, sustainability really important, and human rights. And then second year, we start multi-strands of the different types of areas that we need in the degree. So the policy and practice space, business development, climate change and agriculture, and human rights. So further information about human rights. In year 3, there is an international placement where you go and study in another university, study development in another university. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. And in the final year, we deepen our knowledge of practice, so communications, development, practice skills, project and financial management, and so on, business development, and taking a series of electives, because it's so multidisciplinary. There'll be electives in history, sociology, politics, geography, sustainable development, and human rights. So it covers a lot of different areas. So somebody with a broad interest, it suits them, suits you. Some of the unique selling points of our subject is focused on sustainable development, human rights, business development. It's very practice-based. It's taught in the west of Ireland, but with a global focus. And it draws upon a very strong interdisciplinary approach, bringing people from different areas involved in teaching and with people who are active in research. Very many students of a BA go on to do further study. And we have a number of degrees. We have a new Master's in International Development Practice that's starting next year. We have a long-standing successful climate change, agriculture, food security. There's a program on environment, society and development, global gender study, and rural futures. Some graduates, although we haven't had an undergraduate program, we've had people from postgraduate programs who've studied in Galway. And some of the kind of things they do, Alison Hearn is head of programs, serious response at Trocra. My own PhD student, Tarek, is a consultant with the UN World Food Programme. Michaela Peters is social media coordinator for Green Step. And Andrew Hanley is the climate risk documentation officer at Concern Worldwide. And so just to leave you with the final slide, these are some grand challenges that development focuses on: saving lives at birth, creating hope with the conflict, making all voices count, all children reading, scaling off grid energy, powering agriculture. So big, important questions that you can play a part in, and I hope you find this interesting. So
that was great, Cathal. Thank you very much for that very informative and interesting talk on international development. Next up, we have a talk on creative writing, and it's going to be Dr. John Kenny who will be talking to you on this.
So again, my name is John Kenny. I direct the BA in English and Creative Writing at NUI Galway, and I'll introduce you to Roisin here in just a moment. But just to say that maybe unlike other sessions, I'm not going to kind of introduce the program in the round to you, because there's a video online already, a 35-minute video that you can access that will give you details, year by year breakdown, details on the modules, some information on the design of the course, the purpose of the course, the spirit of the course, and so on. And if you Google NUI Galway creative writing, you'll find that video fairly handy. So what I thought we'd do instead, and what might be more useful for you, is an actual kind of taste of a kind of class that's crucial to what we do in creative writing, right from the get-go in first year, actually. When you arrive in first year, you will take a module in fiction, and you will also take a module in what we call the professional writer. It's a module focused on the writing professions. And what that module involves is inviting in weekly, for 2-hour sessions, for lengthy 2-hour sessions, writers of all kinds and other professionals to do with the writing industries, to talk to you about what the writing life is like, what writing practice is like from the writer's point of view, what it's like to try to get books published, what it's like to try and circulate as a writer, make a pathway for yourself as a writer. And we have all kinds of genres covered through those sessions. The way those sessions work would be that sometimes indeed we take prompts from students themselves in terms of who we might invite. But the way those sessions work is we would know fairly well in advance who we're going to have on a particular day, and it would be your assigned task, it would be part of your assigned tasks to research this writer, to brief yourself on who they are, what they do, how they've built a career for themselves, and to sample their work. And I thought that's what we would do. We would assume for the next, say, 15 minutes that we have invited this esteemed writer in front of us here, Roisin, and I'll invite Roisin to turn on her microphone. This folks, is Roisin Kyberd, a writer, a non-fiction writer primarily at the moment, best known for this particular book, which I have on my Kindle here, my oversized Kindle, The Disconnect. It's a book which will be very relevant to yourselves indeed. It's a book about growing up digital, about growing up with the internet and what that means in all kinds of ways. It's a collection of essays on that phenomenon. So Roisin, thank you very much for joining us today as our taster visiting writer.
Thanks for inviting me along, and yeah, almost didn't make it there due to technical difficulties. I seem to, someone in the chat note made the point that the title of my book has brought these troubles upon me, which I think is about right, yeah.
We'll get to the disconnect in just a moment, maybe, Roisin. Maybe the right way to start would be to ask yourself, if you might, to cast yourself back to who you were when you were in your mid to late teens, and how your brain was working and how your sensibility was beginning to form towards the Roisin that is now an established writer.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Every so often I'll have these moments when I start to wonder about that, like, am I the person I always was? And is that why I was able to get published and I've been able to do things like teaching? Or is it maybe something else? You know, is it that we are the product of our life experiences and our writing is the product of it too? I think when I was around that age, I had always shown a very keen interest in English and in languages in general. And I was fairly, you know, well read for my age, I guess. But I was also extremely uncertain of myself. You know, that creative spark was there and a sort of sense that writing was inevitable. I think if you have that feeling, like that writing is a thing that comforts you, that helps you to maybe make sense of the world and to understand yourself and the world around you, then you probably are already showing signs that you are a creative writer and you should pursue it. But we're told so many myths about what it is to be a writer. And I think the biggest one is this vision of someone waiting for inspiration to strike. And then they write it all down and it floods out and it's just perfect. And then they send it off and it gets published. And it couldn't be further from that. My route to doing this as my job has been very roundabout. And when I was going into university, I studied English rather than creative writing. And it was very beneficial in ways because I consumed a lot of literature and all of that sort of, you know, it just stews in your brain for a year or two. But it also was quite didactic, the course that I was on. It gave me this very strong sense that there was a right and a wrong, and there was a canon, and there was definitely a set way of doing things, which kind of killed my confidence as a writer for about a year or two afterwards. So if I'd been able to kind of maintain an optimism and a sense of just experimentation, rather than, you know, oh, don't even ask that question, that might make you look stupid. Yeah. That sense of experimentation, I think, might have served me better and maybe would have got me started as a full-time writer much sooner, I suspect.
Yeah. Could I ask you to focus for a moment, Roisin, on one word you used there, which I've come to think over the years of teaching creative writing here at NUI Galway and being involved with writing students, that it's almost like a talent to be cultivated, and that is the talent of uncertainty, of not being, you know, of not always being stridently confident and sure of yourself. That uncertainty is actually a good tool for a creative writer to have, because we know that there is an infinite number of ways of, let's say, writing a sentence. So the last thing you want to be certain that you've gotten it right the first time. The uncertain mind kind of naturally lends itself to the idea of drafting and redrafting, and the notion that creative work is elicited over time. It's not just, it doesn't just happen at a stroke. And was that something you tried to hold on to, do you think, the importance of uncertainty for the creative sensibility?
Yeah, and I think it's why writing is in so many ways a practical skill, because it helps you to cultivate and kind of process your curiosity about the world. The beautiful thing is that writing is the medium, and then what you layer on top of that, if you're a writer, is your curiosity, your interest. It's always, yeah, I think it only increases as time goes by, because I'm much more comfortable these days with saying that I don't know about something.
Yeah.
But what I find so inspiring is this kind of, especially like I've been an essay writer for the last few years, and I'm kind of moving into other forms of writing now, but the essay has always held a great deal of promise for me, because it seems to sort of serve you in life as well as in writing. You know, if you go right back to the origins of the essay, you have the verb essayer in French, like to try, and you have Montaigne saying like, I know nothing. Which is so philosophical, and it's such a kind of outlook on life as well as an outlook on writing. But if you approach your writing in that way, going into a subject that you don't maybe know anything about, and you have to just be comfortable with that, and then asking questions, following your curiosity, reading and constructing an argument, which, you know, an essay is almost an argument with yourself. And I always say it's kind of a tug of war with your reader's attention too. You know, it's anticipating that someone might not be convinced, and maybe you don't know either, but you're going to try and translate this idea or this concept to your reader, and you're going to try to reach some kind of understanding by the end.
Yeah. Non-fiction and essay writing have become a broad genre that students have found themselves more and more at home in. We have found over the years that on the one hand, fiction is perhaps what we're most immediately comfortable with, and that's why first years would start writing fiction as soon as they arrive with us. But by the second semester, folks out there on the other side, you would be writing non-fiction, and it would be at that time you would most likely meet a writer like Roisin. I wonder, Roisin, could you talk a little bit further about why the essay for you, and how your essay writing got you towards this particular collection of essays, which is The Disconnect? Where did The Disconnect come from, and what did the road there look like?
Yeah, it's a really varied road. I did for a year I worked at an ad agency. I was going to do a postgrad degree. And I worked as a brand of cheese on the internet, where I represented a brand of cheddar cheese.
The best possible kind of training.
Yeah, and it was so funny because it was back in about 2012, and it was this quite transformative time where when I started at that ad agency, they only had a very tiny team of 2 other people and me, and they kind of on the online stuff, and they just gave me the job because they knew I had, like, they considered me a web native because I was of a certain generation, and you know, I was used to going on social media. But by the end of even that year, that team had already expanded so much. But during that year, I realized I didn't want to work in advertising, but I was observing all these strange online behaviors, and I didn't really understand them. And you know, in the spirit of I know nothing, I have no background in technology, but I have just grown up around the internet, as will many other people, I'm sure, especially watching right now. And that is, you know, that is a grounding in something, that is an experience, and I wanted to gain perspective on it. So I started pitching articles to Motherboard, which is Vice's technology website. They're great, and they kind of welcome very, you know, unusual stuff that maybe you wouldn't get to write elsewhere. And I ended up writing a column for them about online communities and online behaviors. So a lot of that ended up becoming the content of the book, but going back and renegotiating it in a very different way of writing. And obviously, when you're writing a book compared to an article, you have so much room to breathe, you know, and you can kind of weave together these overarching concepts rather than having to deliver everything in just 1,000 words or 2,000. As that time went on, I kind of burnt out on doing journalism, although I still do a lot of it right now. And I started looking into writing essays. which are much, oh, I've gone all dark, which are a much kind of more, in a way, a much more challenging medium. I like the fact, this is another thing that's wonderful just about creative writing in general. Once you have exhausted one form, as well as one subject matter, you can move on to another and completely challenge your brain. There's a kind of neuroplasticity of writers where, you know, you don't have to stick to writing essays. You can move into writing, like right now I'm trying to write a novel that's half an essay in the middle. And after that, I want to write a much more kind of conventional novel. But yeah, so in this case, all of that, those years studying these weird online communities and, you know, just strange tendencies in popular culture really got me thinking I could do something bigger with this. The other thing is Ireland is wonderful for journals. We have all these really interesting, very diverse as well, literary journals, and it's a great place for anyone starting out as a writer. And, you know, I'd encourage anyone while they're studying creative writing and also after to submit as much as possible and just get on their radar, you know. But that really helped me. So getting published in the Dublin Review, that had an immense effect. Two of the essays in the Disconnect were first published in the Dublin Review, and working with its editor as well, you know, it had such an effect on me, and it really inspired me to actually think big and to put more of myself into my writing too, because I was used to being a journalist. And suddenly he was saying, you know, be more personal. It doesn't have to be all personal. It can be, you know, looking inward and looking outward, but, you know, bring a bit of yourself to your writing. And that I kind of got more comfortable with that as time went on. The Stinging Fly was also a place where one of the essays was published that ended up in my book. It's called Bland God, Notes on Mark Zuckerberg.
Thanks, Roisin. And I wonder, by way of maybe moving towards talking just a little bit, it's not always advisable, of course, to ask a writer, how's the writing going? What are you doing now? But by way of maybe heading somewhat to that territory, I wonder, could you talk a little bit about your writing practices and routines, how you like to get the work done, and whether that has changed much over time?
Yeah, there are so many prescriptions for how to write on the internet and in books and in articles. And actually, I think you have to just read as many of them as possible, and also exercise a bit of critical thinking and also knowing yourself, which is so useful just in life in general. So, you know, I know that there are these they remind me almost of workout plans, you know, where like you have exercises that you do every day. And I don't know, I don't really do that, but I don't like the idea of forcing myself to write when I don't want to. So in terms of the origin of the idea, I don't want to force that. I like to try and give myself lots of time to read books, absorb as much as I can in terms of knowledge and culture, and follow those little threads of curiosity that I might have. But then here's the bit where the more sort of rote mechanical work comes in. It's the afterwards, you know. So yeah, you write the piece, and you for me, I'm a chronic over researcher, even for writing fiction. I think it's just a thing that comforts me. I do way too much research. I make pages and pages of notes, and then I sort of just drop them all and go away. And if my brain can remember and hang on to certain things, then I decide that those are the most important things, and that helps me to cut everything down. So I go draft into draft, and it gets smaller and smaller. But then it's a case of just going back and editing. Good work happens with time and with repeated effort, and then with collaboration with an editor, I think. It's not just this magical thing that you do and then it's done and then it's perfect. And I think if you're on a course like creative writing, you learn that, because that's where the real craft kicks in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Coming back again and again and having the kind of tenacity to stick it out and make the work really great.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Roisin. Do we have a couple of minutes, Stephanie? Yeah, we have a couple of minutes. Yeah, thanks, Roisin. Now you alluded to this yourself, and I suppose that it's excellent advice for us to be careful of these things. The internet, the world is full of golden rules. You know, the list of 10 things to do if you want to be a great writer. But I'm going to risk asking you anyhow. What would you be able to offer young writers, say, one or two pieces of advice as you see the world, as you see the future of writing at the moment, of things to maybe do and not do, maybe areas to concentrate on, one or two do's and don'ts?
One thing I wish I had done sooner is just calling myself a writer. I had all these strange conditions, like, and to do with things like earning money or getting published in certain places. And actually, it was no different, you know, 6 or 7 or 8 years ago than it is today. I was always someone who was writing, and if you're writing, you're a writer. Now that goes the other way too. Don't go too long, and don't get kind of weird superstitions in your head that like there has to be a perfect time. It really just happens when you do it. So, and you will always have your own sensibility and your unique worldview, and that's what makes you special. So just do it, just write, just show up and try, and don't be afraid of failure, because really, ultimately, every good writer is failing probably hundreds, if not thousands of times with everything they write, because that's what the editing process is. It's just trimming away the bits. It's not really like failure is a really stigmatizing word. It's not even a failure, but it's just, you know, trying, experimenting and cutting things away until you have what you feel is perfect.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thanks, Roisin. Well, Roisin, on my behalf, on the behalf of the Taster class today, I want to say thanks very much for being our guest writer, for joining us, albeit it was brief. And folks on the other side, Taster students, just to say that for a class like this, we would chit-chat with Roisin for 2 hours. You would get lots of opportunities yourself to inundate Roisin with questions and just raise items for discussion. You might get to chit chat with her a little bit at the end. She would have additional, maybe individually tailored pieces of advice, reading recommendations, that kind of thing. And while Roisin is talking, and immediately afterwards, you'd be required to keep your own kind of writer's journal, a self-reflexive journal, to help you begin that process of being very, very aware of the ongoing evolution and development of your own imagination and sensibility. And that in turn would feed into an end of term assignment. Okay. So that's it, folks. Thanks very much again, Roisin. Thanks very much, Taster Day students, and thanks to the Taster Day team. If you, again, folks, if you go to the video that's up on YouTube, Creative Writing NUI Galway, my contact details are at the very end of that. So please feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. I'll certainly be happy to get back to you. Okay, thanks, everyone.
That was great. Thank you so much, John and Roisin. Really interesting and informative conversation between the both of you. Okay, guys, so we are going to take a 20-minute break. So we're actually back at 11. After the break, we're going to have a talk in digital arts and technology, and the second talk is in performance and screen studies. So we look forward to having you back at 11 o'clock. Hello, everyone, and welcome back after the break. We have 2 great talks ready for you now. So the first one is digital arts and technology, and I will hand you over to Dr. Paul Killeen, who will talk to you about this subject.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming this morning. So I'm the director of the BA Digital Arts and Technology. It's a program within the discipline of English in the School of English and Creative Arts. And it's an interesting program because it fuses both an art subject and IT. So I have to move through my presentation here. I don't seem to have control over my presentation at the moment.
Just click in the presentation once, and that'll put you, focus back into PowerPoint.
Thanks very much. Okay, so sorry for that disruption, everyone. So why would you study the BA in Digital Arts and Technology? Well, in the first instance, digital technology shapes our lives in so many facets these days, from education and work, communication, social life, media, design, and indeed in every sort of creative practice as well, whether it's film or social media and so on. So we do need advanced digital literacy, digital skills more generally to understand how it's affecting our lives. We need to understand as well how these new technologies can be applied to creative arts, to literature, to our cultural heritage, And we need to think about the impacts of digital technologies on human society more generally, both the positive and the negative. So in the BA in Digital Arts Technology, what we try to do is help students to discover the creative and more productive ways to use technologies. And essentially, it's about using technology to be both creative and critical. So that means developing your critical thinking about this influence of technology on our lives. So the structure of the program is interesting. It's a 4-year program, and in year 3, you go on placement. And in recent years, our students have been in placements at design companies, at technology companies, business companies that have sort of design or technology/business component, and they've all done very well. It's very interesting, the diversity of kind of career trajectories that seems to be emerging out of the course. So in year 3, that placement would take place. But if we look at the structure here, we can see that like what happens is you do an art subject in first year. It's an art subject of your choice, and I'll give you a range of options for those art subjects in a moment. You also do information technology, so you do a suite of modules in IT. And then in addition, you do a digital culture stream in which you do some critical thinking about technology, but also a lot of creative practice, whether it's video editing, graphic design, interactive storytelling, and elements like that. In year 2, we kind of replicate that. So you'll go into the second year of your art subject, you'd go do your second year of IT, and you'd have the second year of that stream in digital cultures. And then in year 3, in the first semester, students have a range of options in arts and media, and these include modules in film, journalism, UX design, games development. And in the second semester, students go on placement, work placement, or an internship, if you want to call it that, or they study abroad. And it is possible to study abroad for the full year, so foregoing that first semester. But typically students go on their placement in the second semester or study abroad in the second semester. And then in the final year, you revert back to studying your art subject, your IT once more, and you complete your program of study in those areas and graduate with that art subject and IT. And you'll also do a digital cultures project over the course of the year. So the art subjects, if you're interested in what art subjects you can do as part of the program, you can do almost all of the art subjects we offer: archaeology, classics, economics, English, and so on. You can look at them on the site. And then in terms of information technology courses, I mean, these are just some of them that you'll be encountering over the course of your study: computer systems, algorithms, computer programming, database systems, multimedia development, artificial intelligence, human-computer interaction. So quite a range there, and the feedback we're getting from our students on placement is that they're finding that these skills are actually very useful in the workplaces to which they've been recruited during their 3rd year placement. So in addition, we have the digital cultures stream, and that's sort of, I suppose, another distinctive part of the program. So within that stream, over the course of full 4 years, you will be working on projects, but you'll also be kind of having opportunities to develop your skills in creative media design, whether it's in video, graphic design, perhaps in interactive storytelling. But in addition, we look at like phenomena in contemporary digital culture, such as memes. And I know the idea of studying memes might seem almost impossible, but there are benefits to looking at memes and how they're shaping our discourse, the way we communicate online. And we can see the ways in which memes and viral images and so on more generally have been used both politically and in a more, I suppose, cultural way to form new communities and achieve, stated goals online of like, so in this case, I have an image from the Occupy Wall Street movement, which is now 10 or 11 years ago, but that was a really successful activist movement that in terms of how it gathered momentum was done through memes and viral media. So we look at the influence of social media on those sorts of cultural phenomena, and one of the topics then we would look at is the way social media is influencing our sense of identity and selfhood in the digital era. We look at the ethics of artificial intelligence and machine learning, the ways in which our social life, but also our artistic and sense of creative experience is being shaped by these new developments. particularly in machine learning. We look at the history of digital art and how digital art kind of has continuities with traditional movements in the fine arts, but also is, you know, a virtual phenomenon. And we look at like the emergence of NFTs in recent years. And we students have an opportunity to practice and create digital art. And more generally, students are encouraged to, you know, produce as many assignments of a practice-based nature as possible. So over the course of your program of study, you'll do podcasts, you'll do video poetry, video essays, short films, and many other forms of creative experience. So afterwards, what would you do if you do this program? There's a range of career trajectories, as I mentioned. Obviously, as always, you can continue on to you know, further study at a master's level and eventually perhaps to PhD. Students who might be interested in becoming teachers down the road, obviously information technology is going to become a much more important teaching subject in the coming decades. So having that ability to teach IT as well as whatever art subject you do will be a significant boon for you. Career in the technology sector is very available. I mean, the students on placement with some of the tech firms that I've visited this year, you know, there's already talk of them being perhaps offered positions, fast-tracked into positions when they graduate. So depending on how you perform within the program, those are real options. And then there's kind of careers in creative arts, culture industries, gaming, design. I would say design is increasingly becoming one of the sort of strong points of the program, so one that our students are very increasingly interested in. But basically anywhere that a strong IT knowledge combined with creative, analytic, and communication skills are valued, you will have the strength to go on and perform in that area. So thanks for your attention today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the talks this morning and this afternoon. Bye for now.
That was great, Corey. Very informative. Next up, we have a talk by Dr. Charlotte McIver, who will be talking on performance and screen studies. So I'll pass you over to Charlotte now.
So much. So hello everyone, my name is Dr. Charlotte McIver and I'm actually a lecturer in drama and theater studies and head of the discipline there, and you're about to get a double header from me this morning. First, talking about our GY 101 performance and screen studies new subject that we're offering from this year on, and then after the break I'll have the opportunity to tell you a bit more about drama and theater studies as well. So you'll likely hear some continuities between the talk my colleague Parig just gave you in terms of some areas of focus in terms of digital culture, digital media, but coming at it from a slightly different direction. So what we're going to do here in this next brief slot is define what performance and screen studies, performance studies and screen studies are and why they might matter to you. We'll look at the course layout from first to final year, and just so you know, this is a brand new course offering for 2022-2023. We'll briefly touch on subject choices as we did in the last presentation, think into employability options, and then I'll give you a way to come into contact with us if you have any further questions. So, what is performance studies? A question that my father is still asking me almost 15 years after I got my PhD. Performance studies involves the multidisciplinary exploration of established performing arts, drama, film, television, etc. And it branches out then into looking at other kinds of public performance, such as social media, as was touched on in the last presentation, but also sporting events, sports media, political activism, and more. When I was sitting where you were sitting in my undergraduate degree, I knew that I was in my high school, or as we call it in the States, moment. I knew that I was interested in theater. I knew that I was interested in culture and the world and how all those things fit together. And at the time that I was sitting where you sit, this was an emerging field within drama and theater studies more broadly, and led to my own decision to pursue a PhD in this field as opposed to only drama or only film studies. So when I talk about performance, and still try to explain it to my dad, I talk about how it comes across in the performance of everyday life, in those moments within sporting events, which are the climax or the kind of fulfillment of a thing that brings us together as a community. Performance is when Taylor Swift is not only performing her song, but performing herself, caricaturing herself in blank space. Performance is the kind of activism, protest, direct interventions, such as we look here in terms of an anti-racist student protest. It's also plain old theater performance, or our favorite performances on sitcoms that we may carry with us then into our daily lives in terms of giving some of our favorite lines from Schitt's Creek as part of our banter with friends. Performance is everywhere. But if it is everywhere, how do you study it in a systematic way? Well, this is what we're interested in working through with you and exploring with you. It's taught in universities internationally. As I said, my own PhD is in performance studies from UC Berkeley, but it's never before been offered as a subject in Ireland on its own or in relationship to screen studies. As I've said, I come from drama and theater studies as my home discipline, so also this field of performance studies is building on our excellence in the area of drama and theater studies, and indeed you could do our denominated drama and theater studies degree alongside the performance studies subject. So how then do performance and screen studies match up together, and what does looking at these two things together open up in terms of connection? I'm going to draw your attention for a moment to the infamous slap of Chris Rock by Will Smith on Oscars night this year, which has ignited a whole international conversation around, how do you deal with an incident like that happening in that sort of a high profile celebrity event? What does masculinity have to do with it? What does race have to do with it? What does Jada Pinkett's role as a woman being insulted in that moment have to do with how the ripple effects of this have gone outwards? He's lost professional opportunities because of this moment. He's gone on the necessary rehabilitation trip to India to go on a spiritual journey. We've had really incisive cultural criticism coming out of the moment, like Roxane Gay's essay talking about the deeper racial and gendered implications of the debates that are breaking out on social media, with everyone sort of having an opinion on it. But there has been pushback from activists who are African American, writers, etc., saying, this is something that has very particular dimensions within the community, so knee-jerk reactions to it need to kind of be checked. Just last night, we had the report of Dave Chappelle, the comic, being attacked on stage, with a connection being made by Chris Rock and others between that event and this event. So once you begin to think about what is the impact on the film industry, what is the impact on the cultural conversations, what does it tell us about the performance of masculinity and Black masculinity in the world today, you can see why we might need a whole subject just to unpack the Chris Rock Will Smith slap. So screen studies then builds on our excellence in the area of film studies at the Houston. It is the study of film and other screen media, including television, platform, and streaming. It's involving discussion of text and the context, like that rich context of the Will Smith Chris Rock moment, in which screen media are produced and consumed. So looking up this in terms of connections, we can see how that slap leads to a change in how Will Smith is actually being employed within the industry. We can see the kind of rehabilitation of the image that he tries to go through, as well as then how it's impacting these larger conversations around gender and representation. So we're studying them both together within this degree because this is the way creative arts professions now operate. My students in drama use digital arts and media techniques within the theater works they create for me. Students within film and screen studies talk about performance, the performance of the actor, the performance of roles within the set. We've seen an explosion in the streaming industry production landscape within Ireland, both in the West and nationally. And we've developed this subject in relationship to this, like what is becoming very evident as a vibrant ecology in our area with job opportunities. And we're looking at this as a hothouse for building sustainable creative enterprises in local, national, and international contexts. So this is a 3-year program. It's taken as part of the arts degree. You study it in your first year as one of your 3 subjects, and then in second and final year, you study it with one other subject. It can be taken with denominated degrees in drama, music, and creative writing. It's located in your art subject group 2, so you can study it with English languages, sociology, politics, and more. And here is what is may not be a totally up to date, but a representative map of some subject combinations that you can take alongside it. In year one, you'll be looking at an introduction to visual culture and performance studies, as well as an introduction to film studies, and a module called Performing and Screening Ireland, which looks both at representation as well as the industries within the country. As you move on in your degree, your strands that you're going to be selecting down in include looking broadly at film and screen industries, as well as looking cross and transdisciplinary through the lens of performance in topics such as sport, body, education, activism, and so on. After you graduate, we see our graduates ending up in the creative industries, looking into creative producing, creating works and leading on them in terms of bringing all those moving parts together in terms of the performance as well as the practical production elements of it. Teaching is a viable pathway for coming out from this subject, studied in combination with your other studies, particularly now as from 2024, drama, film, and theater studies is now a leaving cert subject, which means that it will be a teaching subject. We see pathways coming out of this into arts management and then all the benefits of an arts degree. Here's just some numbers to put with the claims towards the growth of the creative industries and particularly the screen industries. This was since in 2016, we had an almost 500 million euro impact from the creative sector on our region and an employment number of just around 13,000. So coming here and studying with us, you're taking advantage of the direct partnerships then that we have with arts organizations who are producing this kind of work, whether strictly within theater, as in the case of Druid, but also within more interdisciplinary arts practices. But even Druid would have been the first Irish theater company to do one of the simultaneous live screenings internationally of their production of Anton Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard in a translation by Tom Murphy several years ago. So again, film and performance and theater are never that separate from one another in how they're being produced and consumed today. You'll also get to take advantage of creative arts on campus, arts in action, student societies, and professional artists and producers teaching on our staffs in both disciplines that are the anchors for this subject. And I hopefully don't need to tell you, but I'll remind you that Galway is Ireland's unofficial cultural capital, and that sort of coming and going of artists and opportunities really shapes and sets the condition for this degree. So for any questions following the presentation, feel free to reach out to me directly at charlotte.mcivor@nuigalway.ie or sean.crossan@nuigalway.ie. Thanks so much for your attention.
That was fantastic, Charlotte. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, we are coming into another 20-minute break. So it is now 22 minutes past 11 and we will be back at 11:40 and we will be back with Charlotte again. See you back. So welcome back, everybody. We're into the final 3 talks of the day. The first being drama, followed by film and digital media, and finally music. So I'll welcome back Charlotte, who is going to talk to you about drama.
So hello, everyone. It's great to see maybe some of you again, and welcome to any new people joining us. So I am the head of discipline in drama and theater studies, and I'm going to talk to you about our BA in drama, theater, and performance. So I suppose my first opening to you in why study drama is that I believe with the core of my not building, but I'm in the theater building, that theater can change the world, or it can make us see that change in process live while it is happening. We need each other to make theater happening, and theater also lets us time travel. So what do I mean by all that? To my right, perhaps your right as well, you can see an image from our production this year in drama and theater studies, our 3rd year, produced a play by Aristophanes, who is a Greek playwright from like back in the day, called The Frogs, which is a play about one Greek god, Dionysus, who you can see here in a boat, going to the underworld to try to find a playwright to come and comment on the state of politics and war and unrest in the world. As this is a comedy, hilarity and mayhem ensues. This is a play that was thousands of years old, which shows this human belief that theater can change the world or comment on it in these really specific and clear ways. It's not something that I invented for the purposes of this talk to get you to take the degree, but something in fact that has been quite in common to human existence. One of the things that really excited me as a high school student in the States and at the prospect of coming to study drama in the university was being with other people who also had this conviction, who were interested in taking texts from 2,000 years ago, bringing them into the present and seeing what still resonated or what still mattered about what was being said or staged or debated in them. I suppose, spoiler alert, for some production you can no longer see, the messages, tensions, and anxieties in The Frogs were deeply resonant with issues in the world today, particularly as our production in March was taking place in the kind of earliest days of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Theater production as a space, as an art form, allows us to time travel to the past, bring texts to the future, and open them up in new ways that allow us to see what is in common about our human experience, as well as what has changed, and just to have a bit of crack as well by putting on frog heads and figuring out how to entertain an audience for 2 hours. So in drama and theater studies at NUI Galway, we believe that theory and practice should always inform each other. I'm going to teach you about the history of Greek theater, but then we're going to do the thing and bring it into conversation with today. Our teaching is inspired by the model of the ensemble, and what I mean by that is a team of people working together to create a thing. To my right again, we'll see an image from our 3rd year production, the year previous to this one, called Unveiled, which was an artistic response to the revelations about the mother and baby home located in Tuam. It was a project happening in conversation with the Tuam Oral History Project, which is also based at the university, and my colleague Miriam Houghton and her students created a theatrical film in response to the findings of this report, using artistic modes of creation to respond and to perhaps bring some of these ideas, some of this trauma closer to an audience in ways that are understandable. We needed people from all different skill sets, all different knowledges coming together, whether it's digital media or theater or history, to make that, and together they made a thing greater than the sum of its parts. As my account of that last project demonstrates, we believe that theater is important, and we not only believe that, but we go out into the world to try to find connections between the work and the teaching and the research that we do in drama and theater studies, and commenting directly on local, regional, national, and international events. And speaking then of that scale between, okay, what's happening right in my building, what's happening in Galway, what's happening in the country, what's happening in the world, the way in which we make those levels of theater production and the meaning that theater makes come alive as well as be present is through our approach to partnership, whether it's our direct partnership with Galway International Arts Festival, where you get an opportunity to apply to take part in a program called Selected during your degree, which allows you to see a lot of the productions and performances at Galway International Arts Festival for free while meeting with leading theatre makers. There's that element to it. We recently hosted the world's largest theatre research conference last year through NUI Galway. So we're always working with others to look beyond our backyard and to use the power of theatre to do so. So what is then the BA in Drama, Theatre and Performance? It's a 4-year degree, drama and 1 other subject. You're in an average class size of 20 to 25 students. We will know your name. We'll know your journey through the degree and each individual module and be with you on that. It's a high points program, 410 pre-pandemic, up to 451 and 453 this previous year in 2021. Practice and theory, as I say, are interlinked, and hopefully I've started to bring some of that to life for you. There are internships and public performances that are integral to the degree that are created and placed and shaped each year by who comes with us in the program. So you're never going to get the same thing in terms of what opportunity may exist with Druid, or whether we're looking at the True Moral History Project or the History of Greek Theatre in the 3rd year production. It's live, it's dynamic, it's in collaboration with the students. There are no auditions for this program because our program is based around this concept that I'll talk about more as this unfolds of the thinking theater maker. And what that means is you may come in thinking that you want to be an actor. I went into my BA in theater thinking that I wanted to be on the acting track, and indeed completing the acting track before realizing actually I wanted to be a scholar and I wanted to be a director and I wanted to bring all these different parts together. So what we try to do in our degree is keep open for you all the different ways that one might contribute to theater and the creative industries that you might discover through this degree and through a holistic approach. It's not about finding the next Cillian Murphy, although we were delighted to have one of our alumni, Emmett Burns, be recognized by the Irish Times Theatre Award as a member of the Best Ensemble, who won for this year for the Long Christmas Dinner. So we do produce some really fantastic performers who've gone on to take a lot of professional work to even be recognized with national awards, but we want to bring everyone in with an open mind and holistic approach to theater. So the qualification then is a BA in Drama, Theater and Performance and 1 other subject, and I'll give you the subject map here in a couple of slides. The career options that come out of this are a career in arts and in theater specifically in terms of practice and production. Today, I was let into my office by one of my former students, Sarah Timmons, who is now the technical director of Galway Theatre Festival, taking over indeed from our own technical director, who now works more full-time at the university. So we've had students go into various aspects of technical theatre production and design, be award-nominated or award-winning performers. We've had students go on to do BAs, MAs. One of our current staff members did her BA in English and a different drama degree that existed at the time, and then went and did a PhD in Shakespeare studies and has been teaching here with us. So lots of different career paths, and again from the spokes of that idea of the thinking theater maker, where you may land many different positions. Something we've been always asked for years is about teaching, and I'm delighted to say for the very first time here today that drama, film and theater studies is now a leading cert subject from 2024. So from where you sit listening to me today, coming into this degree program and doing it perhaps in conjunction with the performance and screen studies, which I had described to you in the last session, is viable. Tell your parents, and parents, if you're listening, we are a teaching subject now. So other options might include public or civil service, tourism and heritage, business, and information technology, due to the link up between the technological skills, whether in terms of technical theater skills or more of the digital media practices that students are bringing in to our degree. And of course, there's the classic of the arts degree as something to fall back on, which is both a cliche, but again, I mean, I think you really need to think for yourself, even at this early stage, okay, what am I studying drama with? What is that combination that I'm making that could open up very diverse kinds of career pathways? So the kinds of modules that you'll take, we have an acting module in our first year, and I will say that we study acting kind of on its own, isolated in that module in the first year, in the history and theory of it, as well as doing scene work. But then as you move through all your modules, almost all of them involve some kind of a performance project. If you're not a performer, there are other roles in terms of directing and writing and such you can take in them. But theory and practice, again, always in balance across this degree. You are always doing. And actually, I'll just go back here for a moment. I want to draw particular attention to one of our modules in fourth year, arts management, which is a module that is about looking at the business of how to do an arts council application, that is looking at how to think about your professional development or trajectory in the field. It's not the first time that you talk about it in the degree with us, but it's a very organized module in terms of preparing you for that immediate step out of the university and into preparing independent applications for funding and so on, perhaps for the first time. So in terms of popular subject combinations, you could do archaeology, French, and maths alongside drama. Legal studies and psychology has been a very popular one in terms of in conjunction with drama. History or classics, English, economics, Irish, Italian philosophy, and the new then performance and screen studies degree in this coming year. Unfortunately, at present, you can't combine sociology and politics, IT, or teaching in Irish, but you know, there are a lot of options here that have led people into quite interesting, I suppose, futures out of that combination. So as I hope I've expressed to you, what I believe is important about studying drama is that you emerge as a thinking theater maker, ready to work across multiple areas of the creative industries. So to give another example, one of our graduates, Amy Walsh, did an internship at Pan Theatre Company, one of Ireland's independent leading theater companies, went on to work with them briefly before going to work with Element Pictures, who had produced, and the name is current, The Favorite, who had produced The Favorite, which was an Oscar award-winning film several years ago, and has continued to work in the film industry while developing her career as well as a stand-up comic. Another graduate from that same class, Ali Green, did an internship with Druid as part of her BA with us, went and did some further study, and then came back a few years out of college to be one of their marketing assistants for several years, working quite high up in Druid before leaving to become the marketing and communications director of a startup whiskey distillery in a rural area, which was her dream in terms of bringing that entrepreneurial spirit to the region and bringing the skills from theater as well as business and entrepreneurship together. So that's the kind of person that we're looking to bring out of the degree, as well as performers. So creative industries as a term, there's theater, there's film, there's art, there's festivals. You know, it's quite a broad church in terms of where you might find yourself sitting, and the kind of three-dimensional aspect of studying and doing theater, I think, sets you up really well coming out of our BA to go into these other areas. You're also building kind of key business skills in terms of presentations, group work, writing, improvisation. And I think it can't be said enough that the small classes, the direct and multi-person mentorship that you will experience by myself and my colleagues is a really special aspect of the degree, and especially going into a field which in some ways can seem narrow, particularly when trying to explain this to your relatives maybe, but actually has so many different career pathways in it. It's important to say as well that this is an area of great pride and investment by the university. The building I'm sitting in, the O'Donoghue Center, is only 5 years old and is a primary example of that commitment. So by coming here and studying with us, we're working your brain, your body, your heart. You're going to be in productions, behind the scenes, and on stage. You're going to have direct opportunities to participate in the benefits of our partnership with the Druid, but also Abbey, Ireland's National Theatre, the Gate, Galway International Arts Festival. This is a 4-year degree with optional work placements and study abroad as well, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And also, if you are already self-identify as a theatre history nerd, our theatre archives are unparalleled on the island of Ireland in terms of the history of Irish theatre. So one of the really special aspects of our drama and theater studies program is that you can study abroad. You can study abroad in the United States, whether through the University of California system, whether through a scholarship program with Berea College in Kentucky, whether with UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina, or in the city of Chicago. You have an opportunity, if you choose to take it, to go study in Australia or Canada, as well as our language-specific exchanges. You will do this while paying the same fees that you're paying to NUI Galway, but particularly in the case of the US universities, there's a huge cost saving there in terms of their fees per year and per semester. So that's a really unique aspect of our program, and one that our students have hugely benefited from over the years in terms of upping their game and making connections. So I've talked about our partnership with Druid, which has just been renewed by the university, and that looks like the opportunity to apply to do a masterclass in directing with artistic director Gary Hines. That looks like attendance at dress rehearsals, or indeed runs during the show and so on, basically front seat access. You're part of a wider, vibrant artistic community, the Baburo International Arts Festival for Children, Galway Theatre Festival. Decadent Theatre has just been rehearsing their show for GIF in our building. We have a partnership with Galway Community Circus as well. You will not be stuck for things to do. You'll also be able to take advantage of our special resources and holdings in terms of theater, in terms of watching the best of world theater live, access to play texts. You're going to be able to be at a front row seat, not only for the best theater in Ireland, but the best theater in the world, and have the opportunity to be looking at that, largest collection of Irish theater history archives in Ireland, which means that you're not only going to get to learn about the history of theater that did happen in Ireland, but the history of theater that was almost produced before being rejected by, say, the early directors of the Abbey Theatre. You're going to get to see Liam Neeson when young and not as famous as part of your coursework, and so on. So thanks so much for listening today. We really hope you'll come and consider joining our program. Here's our course website. You can follow us on social media, or you can get in touch with us directly at drama@nuigalway.ie. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Charlotte, for two brilliant talks on both performance and screen studies and drama. Some really interesting subject options, and it sounds like a really exciting course to take part in. So next up, we have film and digital media with a talk with Sean Crossan.
So I'm going to talk to you. There's two things I wanted to do. So this is a taster session. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an insight to those that are interested in taking film and digital media of, I guess, to give you a sense of the type of things or approach that you'll be encountering on one side of the house in terms of what we do in our program. So the program is film and digital media. I'll go into more detail about the program shortly. It's broken down into kind of roughly 50-50 practice and 50% theory and history of film. Right, so we'll come to that in a moment. So my background and my focus and what I teach and what I research is on the theory and history component, and I have a particular interest in sports cinema. So what I want to do today is just for maybe 10 minutes, I think we've 20 minutes in total, for 10 minutes to talk a bit about a topic, a small, very, very small insight into the research that I'm doing, to give you a sense of one approach that you will encounter more broadly in our program, and then we'll go into the BA itself and a little more detail about the program itself, its structure, its content, the modules, and the kind of opportunities that it is leading to for students on the program, and for you if you do come onto our program in next year or in future years. So one of the things to say about film, and this is something that applies more broadly to popular culture, is that popular culture, of which film of course is a critical component, is crucial to how people understand the world around them and their place in it. And this is where one of the kind of approaches that we talk about when we look at film and we analyze film is how film, the role that film or the function that film has more broadly in society. And film as a popular entertainment and within popular culture what we encounter in film. People, probably many of you who are listening to me now, you go to the cinema, go to maybe the Omniplex if you're in Galway, or to the latest major Hollywood release, and it's often mostly viewed as escapist entertainment, an opportunity to relax and escape from the pressures of everyday life. But the reality is that when we analyze film and we critically kind of break down what a film is doing and what a film is saying, that films have very, very important and influential ideological messages within them that are really important to how people understand who they are, how the world around them, their kind of interests in life, and the way they understand the world and their place in it. So I wanted to start by, now, of course, the news is dominated right now by the horrific events in Ukraine and the recent Russian invasion. And you're probably already aware that there's two very different narratives that is being communicated around that war. One which dominates here in the West, which is rightly abhors the acts of violence that are ongoing and the aggression from Russia towards Ukrainians, and the other is within Russia itself. And within Russia itself, there's a very different narrative that's been communicated. And part of how that narrative and part of how the Russian population have come to understand their country and understand their relationship with their neighboring countries is through film. And sport film has had a really important role in that process. So, the most popular Russian film ever produced at the local box office is a sports film called Going Vertical, released in 2017. This is a film about the very unlikely and unexpected victory of the Soviet Union basketball team over the mighty American team at the 1972 Munich Olympics. The film itself is a hugely patriotic account of the Russian, Soviet Union, Russian team overcoming the American aggressors. And it's, if you're familiar with the Rocky franchise, for example, you're familiar with, say, during Cold War American film, it's like inverting the kind of Rocky Forting of the evil Russian or many other Hollywood films, where the Americans are seen as the aggressors and the Russians are the kind of heroic figures who are trying to overcome and succeed, using sport as the context for that encounter. I came across this film because I've been doing research and looking at sports cinema across Europe, from Russia to Ireland, and looking at the way in which it's grown and its popularity over the last, say, 20 to 30 years. And Russia is particularly interesting because there's been a huge growth in sports cinema to coincide with Vladimir Putin's campaign to promote Russia abroad through sport, hosting the Olympics, the Winter Olympics in 2014 in Sochi, which coincided, by the way, with the initial invasion of the Ukraine, the taking over, annexing of Crimea, and the subsequent hosting of the World Cup in football in 2018. And what you find is that sport has become an increasingly popular topic across Russian cinema from the 1990s onwards. And the sports that are featured are often sports that emphasize physicality, physical ability, physical strength. So boxing and martial arts, for example, are very popular sports features. But even in those sports that don't feature directly kind of physical, like football or ice hockey, often it's the physical prowess of the players that's emphasized within the productions. This graph gives you a sense of some of the kind of themes and topics covered. And when we look at the films themselves and the most popular films released, we find a particular discourse being promoted. So this is a film from 2012 called Match, and this film depicted a very famous match, legendary, to be honest. It's based on a mythologized event, a match where players from FC Start, a team in Kiev in Ukraine, were forced to play against Nazi occupiers during World War II. Now, what we find is a rewriting of this story in this Russian film, where all of the Ukrainians and those who speak Ukrainian are depicted as Nazi sympathizers and Nazi collaborators. This was a very, very popular film in Russia in that year, But of course, not in Ukraine. There was huge protests against the film because of the way in which, and you might already have encountered this narrative coming from Russia now, how the Ukrainians are depicted as Nazis, as fascists. And popular culture was critical to how that discourse became, was promoted, was popularized, and was regretfully was accepted by a considerable percentage of the Russian population. And you follow through that, through the 20 teens, from 2012 to 2014 into 2016, you have a series of very popular films, Russian films. This is Legend Number 17, a very famous Soviet hockey player, and a number of films called Champions and from 2014, 2016, which are about celebrating Russian prowess in sport in this period, to coincide with the attempt to promote Russia's power and influence internationally through sport. And Going Vertical is particularly interesting in this respect, in that, as I said, it's the most popular sport, but it's a very obvious example of where the state and popular culture come together to promote a particular narrative about Russianness in this period. So you might recognize the man on the left, Vladimir Putin. The man on the right is the producer of Going Vertical, a very, very successful Russian film producer who has produced perhaps some of the most successful films of Russia over the last 20-25 years. A man called Nikita Mikhalkov. And Mikhalkov is a very close friend of Vladimir Putin. He's the head of the Russian Cinematographers Union. He actually wrote a letter to Putin after his second term in office in 2008, begging him not to resign and to continue as president. He was awarded the First Degree Order of Merit for the Fatherland, the highest award a civilian can get in Russia. And he's been very closely aligned with Putin in terms of promoting a particular narrative of Russianness through popular culture and through his films. So what we find in the film then is a particular approach to Russianness, which emphasizes the importance of sport to bring Russian people together, but also about the Soviet Union as somebody that, as an entity that encompassed a broad range of ethnicities. Now, the poster for this film is really, really interesting. By the way, the lead actor in this film, who plays the Russian coach, Vladimir Garishin, was a man called Vladimir Mashkov. And Vladimir Mashkov, who we see here in this photograph, actually nominated Putin for the presidency in 2018 and is one of the biggest actors, very famous actor within Russian cinema. So we see here a way in which the infrastructure of film is contributing to and supporting a larger political discourse and narrative. Now, when we look at the film itself, we find, even in the poster of the film, something that contains a nostalgia for a Soviet, looking back to the Soviet Union and what it meant and what it encompassed. In fact, the poster is based on this poster. This is a poster from 1946. It was a very famous poster that emerged during Stalin's era, and it was a poster that emphasized the connectedness of peasants, of workers, of all ethnicities across Russia, or of the Soviet Union rather, joined by the concept of the Soviet Union, this larger entity. And you can see here in the picture on the right, the man holding the flag. You see the very, very strong parallels between that image and the image in Going Vertical poster. They're connected by that device he's touching, which captures the letters of the USSR in the Cyrillic alphabet, that brings together all of the people in the Soviet Union. Whereas in the contemporary context, you'll see that's replaced by a basketball, suggesting that sport similarly has that role to play to bring together the diverse peoples across Russia. However, it's not just Russia, because when we look at the film itself, the film includes players in this team from Lithuania, from Georgia, from a broad range of countries that are no longer part of the Soviet Union. And a big part of the discourse in the film is emphasizing their obligations to support the team, read Russia, to connect with Russia, to affirm the Russianness, the Soviet, the connectedness of these countries that previously were part of the Soviet Union as part of a discourse that's preparing a population for what is to come, i.e. the invasion of Ukraine. If you remember the discourse that preceded that invasion by Vladimir Putin, where he emphasized that Ukraine is not a country, Ukraine is part of Russia. And this is very clearly the narrative that we find in this film, produced just a few weeks before the re-election of Putin in 2018, and also a film that was part of the discourse rejecting criticism internationally of Soviet or Russian corruption around sport, national doping regime, for example, it's banning from Olympic events. Okay, so that's my 10 minutes. That's a speedy kind of example of how you might think about or to kind of bring home to you that film is much more important than we might necessarily fully understand or appreciate, and the importance of being able to read and to reflect critically on film as an art form. And this is central to what we do within Houston and within our program, the BA in Film and Digital Media. So what does our program do? So the program offers a unique combination of theory and practice across the areas of film and digital media. We have a core focus on the development of creative and critical skills. We focus on small group teaching, so we would usually have a maximum of, say, 30, 31 students who would come in each year. And when they come in, they encounter a comprehensive grounding in theory and history of film and digital media on one side, and on the other you will acquire the practical skills in filmmaking, in screenwriting, and in digital development and digital design. In terms of entry requirements, in the past year the entry requirements were 440. Now I should say that it's likely to be that or perhaps even higher. We've had a considerable increase in first round CEO applications, about 25% on last year. So it's likely to be between 440 upwards towards perhaps 460 to 500. It's hard. These things are very difficult to predict, but that's likely to be the range for the program. There's no additional entry requirements other than points and NUIG's basic matriculation requirements, which you'll find in the prospectus. The Houston School of Film, we are the dedicated film and digital media department within NUI Galway. We were established in 2003 under the patronage of the Houston family, probably best known today through Angelica Houston, the Oscar-winning actress who has been a strong supporter of our school. And it was actually named in honor of her father, John Huston, one of the most important directors of the classical period of Hollywood cinema. Our graduates have gone on to considerable success in the fields of film and media. For example, Will Collins was the screenwriter of the animated film Song of the Sea and Wolf Walker, both of which were nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2015 and 2021. Galway is also a UNESCO City of Film in recognition of the centrality of film culture and culture more broadly, screen industries more broadly to the city and region. We are the home of, Galway is the home of the Irish Film Board. It's at the heart of it's often called, of course, the cultural capital of Ireland. It's the second most important region in terms of the amount of activity going on in the screen industries. And by coming on to our BA, you will connect with that kind of rich creative community that has developed in Galway and across the west of Ireland. So the kind of learning objectives we have within the program itself, we prepare students to be able to analyze, interpret and critique films, and you had some kind of brief taste of that at the beginning in terms of my analysis of recent Russian sports cinema. But we'll take a variety of theoretical perspectives to undertake that analysis. We will share with you skills in pre-production, production and post-production for film and digital media. And you'll learn to apply design thinking processes to real-world social and creative challenges. Also, in terms of screenwriting, the program provides an understanding of the fundamentals of story structure and writing for the screen, and you'll be trained in working collaboratively to produce film or digital media projects. The structure of the program, when you come in year one, you'll be taking our subject with 2 other subjects. And then in second year, you'll take 1 other subject through to the end of your degree. In third year, the entire year is spent with us, and I'll go through some of that content shortly, and you'll return in year 4 to your second subject along with film and digital media. We are in group 2 of the various groups within the BA program in NUI Galway. And you, unfortunately, if you want to do psychology, Celtic Civ or law, you cannot take any of those with film and digital media, but you can take 2 from any of the other options in groups 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7. So what's the content then? In year 1, you have 4 modules. Semester 1, you have Introduction to Film Studies, which gives you a broad introduction to film and the key kind of aspects, fundamentals of film. And Digital Design is your first practice module, where you'll learn about graphic design, introduction to aspects of graphic and creative media design. Semester 2, Introduction to Visual Culture, which is a broader introduction to visual culture as it is developed, and some of the major issues in that area to consider. And you'll have your first film practice module then in semester 2, Introduction to Filmmaking, where you'll start to get hands-on experience of cinematography, sound, lighting and post-production. Year 2, you'll increase to 6 hours of lectures plus screenings per week. And here you'll have a deepening in your understanding of film history, film theory. You'll also learn about digital storytelling, which is looking more broadly about the impact of digital media and digital technology on narrative and the creation of narratives. You'll have your screenwriting, first screenwriting module, and practice will continue in both digital media and film practice. Year 3 is broken into the first semester, where you'll continue with your practice, and that'll be complemented by modules that will look at aspects of early and silent cinema, and we have other options that are coming online for year 3 as well. Second semester, you'll either study abroad or you'll go on work placement with some of our work placement partners. And we have a broad range of partners, including Fabine Media, Danu Media, Raw Television, Iris Productions, that students are out on placement with at the moment in year 3. Our university partners for study abroad, here's a list, just to say the UK in their wisdom have left the EU, which has complicated our partnerships there. So we're all the time revising our partnerships, and you'll be provided with information in year 2 on the detail of that. In year 4, you'll again have 6 hours, and you'll have a broad range of modules to choose from, some of which are listed here. In terms of graduate attributes, what we're trying to develop is key skills for graduates in critical thinking, in creative entrepreneurship, and in collaborative work, and providing knowledge and skills in a broad range of areas. Already, some which I've already outlined. In terms of career options, so we've had people from our postgrad. We were in year 4 of our first iteration of the degree, so we haven't had graduates yet, but the possibilities from our placements are film and television production, digital content production, culture administration, screenwriting, digital marketing, and the transferable skills you'll acquire will also have even broader potential application in other industries. For further information, these are our links. This is my email and my office number, and very happy to take direct email queries you may have about the program or the program's content. And I think I'm more or less out of time, Stephanie, is that right?
Yeah, that's perfect, Sean. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
That's great, Sean. Thank you. So next up, we have Dr. Aiden Thompson, who will be discussing the music elements in NUI Galway. So I'll hand it over to you, Aiden.
Okay, many thanks, Stephanie, and welcome to the presentation for music. My name is Dr. Aiden Thompson. I'm the head of music at NUI Galway and a senior lecturer here. And some of you may know that this is the newest undergraduate music degree in Ireland. It's been going since 2018, so we're about to have our first cohort of students graduating this summer. It's going to be a very exciting day all round. It is a a 4-year degree, the BA in Music, joint honours degree. I'll be telling you a little bit more about the structure of the degree and how it fits in with other subjects later on, but it's very similar to how a number of the other denominated degrees work as well. The focus of the degree is on developing musical skills of all kinds. You'll obviously be assuming that performance will be part of that, and that is absolutely true. But it's not just performance, it's areas like composition, like history, different types of performance, traditional music, classical music, pop music, music theory, sound technology, harmony, keyboard harmony. I'll be telling you more about how these elements fit together, but they are all part of the degree. And one reason that we include all these elements is that if you want to go into teaching afterwards, we tick all the boxes and then some for the Irish Teaching Council's requirement for those of you thinking about doing a postgraduate master's in education. So the focus on developing all these different musical skills, and above all, an engagement with what I call the language of music. That is to say, how music works, how we understand music, not just as a performer, but as a creator and as a listener as well. A feature of the degree is that in year 3, you have the option in your second semester to study abroad. I'll be telling you more about who some of our partners are a little bit later. Or to do some kind of music work placement in Galway. And again, I'll be telling you a little bit about some of the partners that we have had and may have in the future for work placement. We also, as part of our degree, have a number of artists in residence. These include the Contempo String Quartet, who are well-known faces around Galway. They've been based in Galway for 20 years now. More about them and on too. They cover the fields of classical music, although they dip into some other types of music as well. And then we currently have the duo Sharon Shannon and Wyn Horan as traditional musicians in residence as well. And these musicians, these artists in residence, are involved in partly practical elements of the degree, but also partly to do with historical and listening aspects and theoretical aspects of the degree as well. And it's great to have them around, and our students enjoy working with them. The aims of the BA, I have mentioned 4 here. There's probably others as well, but these are the 4 core ones. Firstly, we are keen that all students in graduating should be able to, what I say here is speak the languages of music. That is to say that you can read music fluently, that you can hear music fluently, that you can play music, that all these elements are put together. And that, of course, means a really good theoretical understanding of how music works, but also how this theory is applied. Theory isn't just some dry element. It's something that feeds in or should feed into how we perform music, how we listen to music, how we analyze music, and how we contextualize the different types of music, the different genres of music. It's about developing a breadth of musical skills. Music as a discipline more generally is very versatile in the range of skills that you will be developing. Obviously, performance is part of that. So is creativity, whether it's writing new music or performing other people's music. But we also have all the skills that you would develop within an arts discipline as well. You need to be able to read, you need to be able to think, you need to be able to write, to analyze, to contextualize. You are dealing with a language, of course, the language of music itself. So in that respect, you've got something in common with, say, a modern language. You might have to deal with what we call musical aesthetics, the ideas about music, perhaps a bit more closely linked to philosophy. You need a good understanding of literature and an understanding of history. Even how music responds to the mind fits in very well with those of you who are doing, say, music with psychology. So music's got a very broad skill set, and part of the degree is to ensure that you develop all these skills. The degree is also about complementing and enhancing other degree disciplines in the arts, and not just the arts, and the humanities more generally. It's been one of the joys of teaching on this degree that you have students, say, who are doing music and psychology, who can give a perspective on music based on their understanding of how people's minds work from a psychological perspective or from a philosophical perspective, or students who have a particular knowledge of a language that they can tie into what they are performing or what they are writing about. We have, for instance, singers who study French or German who are able to sing songs in those languages, or who can write authoritatively about music from those places. So there's a lot of different ways in which music fits in with other disciplines. There isn't really one discipline that works better for music than another in terms of what makes it a good fit for the degree. And of course, one of our other aims is to prepare graduates for employment, whether in music or in other areas. And those of you who are interested in a degree in music are probably thinking in terms of a musical degree, but it's important to remember that if you choose not to go down that route in the end, a music degree is a perfectly good training. We have one final year student at the moment, for instance, who is thinking of going to a career in event management, and she has found this degree very helpful in giving her opportunities in this area, not least in terms of a work placement within arts management. So employment shouldn't just be seen as something that is music specific, but can be more general. Now, music is a joint honours degree. That means that it will make up roughly 50% of your degree overall, though in some years it will be more than that, and in some less than that. And more of that in a bit when I explain the structure of the degree. A little bit on entrance requirements. There are two ways for students under the age of 23 to get into the degree. One of these is predictably how well you do in your leaving cert, and the points are normally somewhere between 400 and 415. It's a little bit higher this year, 462. It was that in the first year the degree ran as well. On the other hand, the 2 years in between are closer to 400. So it's quite hard to say exactly what the points are going to be, but I would say somewhere between 400 and 450 is going to be the norm. Alternatively, if you don't get those points, you can do one of the following QQI courses at a local further education college, music performance, sound production, or the two coded music courses mentioned here. And if you get 5 distinctions in the units that make up those courses, that is another way that you can get admitted onto the music degree. We're also from 22-23, so from next year, we're going to be introducing an entrance test, an entrance exam. And the aim of this is not to exclude anyone, it's just to give students or applicants who decided to do this exam the chance to get some additional CAO points. And that way the extra points would push them into the level that would be required for admission to the degree. One thing that doesn't count towards admission to the degree is grade exams. So if you are outstanding as a performer and you've got lots of grade 8 exams, that's wonderful. But ultimately, it's going to be how well you do academically that will get you onto the degree. A little bit about music making in Galway. As you may well have heard in previous presentations, Galway has a very strong reputation as a cultural capital, and music is no exception in this area. We have a number of partnerships within the university. I mentioned Sharon Shannon and Wyn Horan earlier. Sharon is a name who will be familiar to many of you, as will her music, I'm sure. A very distinguished button accordion player who has performed a lot in Galway over the years, but she's also performed in other places. One of her colleagues is the American fiddle player Wyn Horan, who's based at New England Conservatory, and they've worked together with our students in traditional music modules through masterclasses and workshops in the past couple of years. We also have the relationship that I mentioned earlier with the Contempo String Quartet, the Galway Music Residency, and that's them in the photo here. 4 string players, 2 violins, a viola and cello, originally from Romania, based in Galway since 2002. In fact, made up of 2 married couples. The 2 violinists are married together, as are the viola and cello players. And the joke is that they are the ABBA of the chamber music world. Fortunately, unlike ABBA, they are still going strong after 20 years and look to be going strong for many years yet to come. And they work with us in workshops in class where we're discussing aspects of listening and of history. They've performed student compositions and in some cases have taught students who are string players. We also have an arrangement with Music for Galway. Music for Galway is a long-running, 40 years old this year, organisation that puts on classical concerts in Galway. And Music for Galway, among their many initiatives, are going to be performing as part of their annual Emily Anderson concert, a concert that takes place in the university to commemorate the first professor of German at the university. From next year, they're going to be performing final year undergraduate student compositions. So if you've got an interest in composition and you want to get live performances at a real live professional concert with professional performers, this is an opportunity for you to do so. And both the Galway Music Residency and Music for Galway also give students in third year the opportunity to do a work placement in the field of arts management, should they wish to do so. Besides these partnerships, there's a lot of music going on within the university itself. The Arts in Action series, which runs every Wednesday, puts on concerts and other events in a mixture of creative arts disciplines, but about half of them are going to be in music, and within these, half will be in traditional music and or jazz, and half in classical music. So you get the opportunity to listen to some really outstanding performers live on a regular basis. How outstanding? Well, we managed to get Christy Moore on one occasion. They don't get much bigger than that. We managed to get Tara Arott, who's probably Ireland's leading opera star, to do a concert last year during lockdown. So we get some pretty good artists in for the Arts in Action concerts. If you're interested in singing, and if you're also interested in being paid to sing, we have a Schola Cantorum. This is a choir that's directed by a professional choir director, Mark Dooley, who's based at St Nicholas's Collegiate Church in Galway. And you audition for this choir, and if you get accepted, not only do you get regular chances to perform, but you also get paid a scholarship, which is obviously nice. There's also a music society within the university, one of the university societies, and it's got a number of different branches to it. There's actually a number of different music societies within the university. Music Soc is the kind of general society that covers music in a wide range of areas, but we also have a choral soc for choirs, an orchestral soc for orchestras. We have a rock soc that does open mic sessions, a trad soc for those of you who perform traditional music, and perhaps most prominently, GUMS, the Galway University Musical Society, that puts on musical theatre. We've had students who've not only performed in musical theatre, but in some cases have directed the performances, in some cases even written the music for the productions that have gone on. So lots of opportunities to perform. And more generally, there's the Galway music scene. There are, as everybody who's been to Galway will know, plenty of musicians performing on shop streets more or less every day of the year, even when it's raining. There's a huge traditional music scene and particular bars in town that are renowned for their traditional performances. There have been many traditional groups that have taken off in Galway, Dodonan, perhaps the best known, many traditional artists who made their base in Galway, many pop groups and popular groups more generally that are based in Galway, including a rising scene in hip-hop, and as mentioned already with Music for Galway, a long-running classical scene as well. So plenty of opportunities for listening in Galway, and plenty of festivals to listen to them as well. The Galway International Arts Festival that runs every July, probably the best known of these, but there's a jazz festival that runs in October, there's an early music festival that runs in May, and many others as well. So plenty of opportunities to get involved as listeners, or indeed to volunteer to assist in the running of these. A little bit now about the degree structure. As mentioned, it's a 4-year degree, and the trajectory, if I can call it that, is one of foundation in first year, consolidating this foundation in second year, a third year that is devoted entirely to music with the opportunity for a placement in the second half of the year, and then more specialisation in your final year. 4 modules in first year for music, along with 4 in each of 2 other subjects. Then second year, you'll drop one of those other subjects, continue with music, for which you'll do 6 modules, and then 6 modules in your other subject. Third year, you do 3 music modules, in your first semester, and then either the placement or the study abroad in your second semester. And then in fourth year, you return to doing music with the subject that you also did in second year, and again do 6 modules or the equivalent in each. What are these modules? In first year, you study an introduction to music history and an introduction to Irish traditional music. These are broadly speaking historical and listening modules. Introduction to music history is music before 1850. Introduction to traditional music, Irish traditional music from 1792 to the present day. You also do a module called Music Practice 1, which is learning about choral singing and developing core musicianship skills. Basic singing, but also things like sight singing and chordal recognition, things like that, as well as singing in a choir. And then theory and critical listening, where you learn the basics of tonal theory and tonal harmony. Then in second year, where you continue with music and one other subject, there are 4 compulsory modules. Harmony and keyboard harmony, which develop the theory skills that you learned in your first year, where you learn basically to write harmony and also to play some basic chordal progressions at the piano. This is an important skill to develop, incidentally, because the Irish Teaching Council require everyone to have done some keyboard harmony in order to do postgraduate studies in teaching. You also have introductions to composition and to sound technology, taught by my colleague, the composer, Dr. Amanda Feary. And then Music History 2 picks off where an introduction to music history left off from 1850 to the present day. But alongside these 4 compulsory modules, you have the option to do 2 other modules. Popular Music's Cultural Identity in Ireland, which is taught within the Centre for Irish Studies. Music Practice 2, which is a solo performance module. Power Hierarchy and Irish Traditional Music, which is a traditional music module, an introduction to musical theatre, which looks at music theatre of the 20th and early 21st century, from Porgy and Bess to Hamilton. In third year, you do 3 modules. This is a year that is solely music. You do 3 modules in the first semester, currently drawn from counterpoint, editing, musical theatre again, and scoring and arranging, all of them very useful skills. And then in the second half of the year, you choose either to do a study abroad, which you'll do if you're doing music with a language, or in some cases if you are doing other subjects as well, or some kind of music work placement, of which more in a moment, or if neither of these floats your boat, you can do a music project of some kind instead as a specialist study across the whole semester. Then in the final year of the degree, you will do an extended essay or composition portfolio. This is weighted double for the degree. And then you do 2 further core modules, writing about music performance analysis, where you learn how to listen to performances and write about them critically, and Music History 3, which is an analysis module. And alongside these, you will do 2 other optional modules. 2 of them are based in performance, one for traditional music, one for all other types of music, Music Practice 3. And then there's modules in opera and women in pop, which are options as well. Study abroad and placements, very briefly. We have study abroad links through Erasmus with universities of Toulouse, Bologna and Oviedo. So if you're doing music in French, you would go to Toulouse, music in Italian to Bologna and music in Spanish to Oviedo. But we're developing other Erasmus links as well, and by the time you start your degree, hopefully these will be in place. We also have a study abroad link with the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, and we have a couple of students who are studying there at the moment for their second semester. Then for placements, these include music for Galway and the Galway Music Residency in the field of arts management, the Journal of Music, which is Ireland's leading digital music newspaper, opportunities there, Music Generation in both Galway and Donegal are options. That students doing music in Irish will often go to Conra na Gaeilge, but perhaps most common are students wanting to teach, and in many cases they'll go to their local second level schools. It's also the option to go to the Win Ceol na Gaillimh, which is Galway's specialist music school. Then once this is all over, what can you do? A variety of things. Most of these are in the field of music, of course, performing, composing, teaching. Academia would all seem like fairly obvious career prospects, but you can also go into areas like sound engineering, music and music therapy, or more public-facing areas like journalism, broadcasting, and publishing. If you've worked with Music for Galway or the Galway Music Residency in a placement, you might want to go into arts administration. And then areas like sound archivism and sound librarianship are increasingly developing the more that we have recorded sound to look after. So there's lots of opportunities for careers in music. Some of them will require, most of them will require probably a further qualification. Some you can probably step straight into. But it's important to remember that music has got opportunities in other areas as well. I taught a former student who is now a public relations executive, and as he put it himself, a music career was great because I learned to deliver projects in time, to work with other people, and to perform in public, and that's what I'm doing now. So just to go back to what I said at the start, music is a subject that you should do because you love it. It's one where you can learn an awful lot about it for its own sake and can go into careers in music should your interest and aptitude take you there. But it's also a subject that can be used as an arts discipline more generally, and one that can take you into a wide variety of areas because of the very broad skill set that a music degree offers you. So we have a little bit of information here, the website and the contact address, and also a video promoting the degree put together in conjunction with the Galway Music Residency, but also speaking to one of our final year undergraduates. So do have a look at that and see what you make of it. And of course, if you want to ask further questions, please get in touch. Okay, that's all I want to say. I hope you enjoy the remaining presentations, and I wish you well in future applications to what will by then be the University of Galway.
That was great. Thank you so much, Aiden, for that talk on music. So everyone, that brings us to the end of the Arts Taster Day, Day 3. I hope you enjoyed being with us here virtually. Hopefully the next time we see you all, it will be on campus and we get to meet you in person. But for now, have a good day, enjoy the weekend, and bye for now.